What's up everybody and welcome to this video where I will be complaining a little bit about this camera, the Nikon Z6 that I'm filming with right now. I bought this camera back in May when I was in America because at that time it was cheaper in America than here in Switzerland, so I thought that it would be a bargain. By now it's not really a bargain anymore because the price dropped shortly after by a lot. And after 6 months of using it as a video camera, I think it's finally time that I share my opinion about it and tell you why I'm actually considering selling it and getting a different camera. Now, before getting to the 5 points that I prepared, let me say that everything I say is only relating to the video capabilities of this camera. If you are interested in this camera, you might already know that Nikon actually sold this camera or still sells it as a filmmaker's camera with a filmmaker's kit, which proves that they intended this camera to be a competition to the Sony cameras that are really gaining market share at the moment. And considering all this, let's get to the first point. So the first thing that I want to mention is that this camera doesn't have an articulating screen. Back when I was considering which camera to buy, this wasn't really a big thing for me because I thought I have already been doing vlogs with the GoPro cameras, which also don't have a front screen, and I thought that it wouldn't really make a difference. But it turns out that there are many situations where I really wish that I had a screen. Sometimes, for some reason, the focus doesn't stick on me, or maybe I forget to turn on autofocus, and then I have to reshoot everything, or maybe there's something completely off with the brightness or the white balance and I have to reshoot everything. If I had an articulating screen, I would know that a little bit earlier and I wouldn't have to reshoot everything. Sadly, there aren't many full-frame mirrorless cameras with the same video capabilities as the Nikon Z6 that also have an articulating screen. The only one that comes to mind right now is the USR. Now point number 2. Seriously, Nikon and many other camera manufacturers, why do you limit video recording to only 30 minutes? That's really lame and stupid. There are so many times where I'm recording something that is longer than 30 minutes and I have to put on a timer to see when those 30 minutes are over so that I can restart recording. That's really a stupid limitation that shouldn't be there. And yeah, actually before I bought this camera, I never thought that I needed to record more than 30 minutes. But here I am complaining about this, so even you might think that you will never record 30 minutes, but maybe there will be a time when you want to record more than 30 minutes and you will be happy if your camera doesn't have a 30 minutes limit. And point number 3, also here because I'm running out of places where I can film myself with the light of outside. Why can I not see the exposure and the microphone levels at the same time when filming something? Doesn't make any sense. I can cycle between different display settings. On one I can see the exposure. Another one I can see whether the camera is straight or tilted. In another one I can see the microphone levels. But shouldn't I have the possibility to see everything on the same screen? I don't get it. That's also a stupid limitation that Nikon could easily fix with a firmware update. But I guess they already gave up to Sony, didn't they? And point number 4, considering that this is supposed to be a video camera, now I had to turn the screen because I didn't know if I was recording, thanks to not having an articulating screen. Going back to point 1. Anyways, how could they have done such a bad job with the preamps? I don't always want to use a huge active microphone. Why can I not use a simple passive microphone like the Rode mic that I'm using? When I'm using that microphone, the sound quality is just horrible. I prepared some samples for you to hear with different preamp levels, but be warned, all of them are bad. This is me talking in a normal voice, sitting about 1 meter from the microphone and the preamp set to level 5. This is me talking in a normal voice, sitting about 1 meter from the microphone and the preamp set to level 10. This is me talking in a normal voice, sitting about 1 meter from the microphone and the preamp set to level 15. They really should have done a better job with the preamps if they wanted this to be a filmmaker's camera that rivals the Sony cameras. Now let's get to the 5th and most important point for myself. The point that is actually making me consider selling this camera and getting a different one. And that is that this camera is using XQD cards. If you don't know, XQD cards are a different kind of memory cards that can reach way higher write speeds than SD cards, but there are actually 2 major problems with it. One is that XQD cards are like 10 times as expensive as SD cards for the same storage, which is actually the reason that I'm almost never recording in 4K. If I record in 4K on this XQD card that I have, which is 64 gigabytes for like $170, I would have it full in like 30 minutes of recording, and I cannot afford to buy more storage on XQD cards. And the second point is that this camera doesn't actually use the benefits of having an XQD card. The highest bitrate that this camera records at is 144 megabits per second. That's less than 20 megabytes per second. And almost every SD card that is sold today can easily reach 30 megabytes per second of write speeds. So this camera doesn't even write at 60% of the speed of most modern SD cards. So why would they put an XQD card in there? Even Sony, who invented the XQD cards, doesn't use XQD cards. Sure, if this camera recorded RAW internally, which it is supposed to record externally at some point, I would understand them using XQD cards instead of SD cards. But at the moment, it's only a big waste of money. And this is also where the problem comes in with myself and considering the world trip. Sometimes I will be off the grid for like 1 week at a time, for example, when going to the Kilimanjaro or on the Machu Picchu trail, or maybe even in Patagonia. And how am I supposed to carry all this footage around me if XQD cards are so expensive? First, I will have to limit myself to only record 1080p instead of 4K, which already destroys the benefit of having a camera that is able to shoot very crisp 4K. But then I also have to carry cards in the hundreds of gigabytes to store all the footage that I will be taking. Actually, I lost my train of thought there, so I don't know exactly what I was saying. Basically, every gigabyte stored in this camera is very, very expensive. At the moment, I'm using one 64 GB XQD card, and I really don't want to buy more because they are way, way, way too expensive. That really is annoying me, actually. But when it comes to a point where I'm asking myself which camera I would like to get to replace this one, that's when I actually struggle. There's the EOS R that has very good autofocus in video, that has an articulating screen and also very good lenses. And it uses SD cards, very important, but it does have a crop in 4K and only does 60 FPS in 1080p, which is a very limiting factor. Second option would be the Panasonic cameras that are released that are very good, but the autofocus is not really up to the standard of other cameras, so that's not really an option. Then another option would be the Sony a7 III, but that one doesn't have an articulating screen and it also crops in 4K. Then we can go to the crop factor cameras, where there are actually some very good in the market, but they are crop factor, and I actually always wanted to have a full frame camera because of some benefits that you get from it with the bigger sensor, which also means that you get better photos or video during the dark, and you also can get wider lenses. So I'm pretty lost on which camera I would get to replace this one, because there are a few important things that the camera has to fulfill for myself. And if there is a camera that fulfills all of those conditions that I didn't think about, please let me know in the comments below. So the points that I want, I hope that I don't forget anything. It has to be full frame. It has to do 4K without any crop. It has to have good preamps. It has to use SD cards, or for all I care, micro SD cards, but certainly no XQD cards. And of course, it does have to have an articulating screen, or maybe a flip-up screen like many cropped cameras have at the moment, so that you can see the screen above the lens. That would also be an option. And ideally it would also have unlimited recording time, and it should also have the capability of seeing different settings on the screen without having to switch between the settings. But those last 2 points I can live without if all the other points are fulfilled, actually. So that's all about my rant for today's video. I really don't know yet if I will be selling this camera or not. I will see, maybe something else is released next year that will solve all the problems I have. Maybe they will make a firmware update that will solve some problems. Maybe I will use the GoPro Hero 8 with the mods, if they are any good, for vlogging, which will also solve some problems. So it's all up in the stars at the moment. But I'm really not happy with many things about this camera. But there are other things that I didn't mention that I'm actually really happy with. I might save this for another video. But anyways, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.